Okay, so good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar by the Sub-RésEAU MENA. Today's topic is going to be about the water, energy, food ecosystems nexus, which we will have a closer look at in the Middle East. My name is Delphine Magara. I am a backstopper to the Sub-RésEAU MENA as well as to the Global Réseau. And today with me, I have the precious technical support of Rebecca Jimenez and Otto Simonet from Zoe Environment Network. We are really honored to have three excellent speakers with us today. We have Dr. Hakam Alalami and Mrs. Lucia de Strasser. And we also have Dr. Tufba Maden. She however, had to excuse herself for her presence today, so her session is recorded. We will have an introduction by Mr. Moufle Alalawin and Dr. Daniel Maselli, and after that we will jump right into the presentations, and this will be followed by a Q&A session where you have time to address your questions and an outlook. Before we start, just a few housekeeping notes. So you have the chat where you can right now write in where you're joining us from. And the chat will also be where we add any additional information to the presentations going on. If you have questions for the speakers, please write them into the Q&A. It's the window that's on the left of the chat, so it's not the same. In case for any reason you're not able to write, during the Q&A, you can raise your hand and I will allow you to speak. This is how we will function. And just take note that this session is recorded and that we will also have two small polls involved. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome Daniel Maselli, please to provide the introduction. Enjoy.
Thank you very much, Delphine. A warm welcome to everyone for this webinar. It's really a great pleasure and the honor to have you with us. And yes, the SDC, the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, and its section Water are running the thematic network Water, which was mentioned before by Delphine, called RésEAU. And we have the different sub-réseaux, and one of them is the Middle East, North Africa one, which is hosting today also this webinar. So on behalf of all these entities, a warm welcome. And I would quickly like to flag why are we having this webinar right now from a headquarters and global perspective. I think SDC has tried also in the recent past to connect several entities, sections that are dealing with these four themes that we have in the acronym of the WEFE. We have actually constituted a green cluster, as we call it. And this is to foster, I would say, a better understanding on how water, energy, food, and ecosystems relate to each other, how they are interlinked, how they interact, and how they're also interdependent. And why do we do that? Or why are we trying to do so? It's because we think that many times in development cooperation, we're too much focusing on symptoms. We have to address issues, but we don't dive deeply into root causes, and we don't really seek for durable solutions. And in order to be able to do so, we need to better understand the systems. So WEFE can help us to improve our systemic understanding and thinking and approach in order to be more relevant with our programs and projects and have strategies developed that are transformative, that are relevant for the societies in the regions, in the countries where we operate as a development agency for Switzerland. So this is a bit the background. So the purpose of this morning is not a technical one. It's more an understanding, an eye opener, and possibly also an appetizer for diving ourselves all more into the nexus thinking of the WEFE. And I would like to quickly just mention that we will have different presenters as was named by Delphine before, but SDC has its Blue Peace Middle East program from which we will also hear. But then we have invited Lucia from UNECE, who will present herself too. And this is disconnected from SDC, and it helps us to have a more broad spectrum of understanding on what is it exactly, how can this nexus be dealt with, and what are first results and learnings from this new, for some at least, or relatively new approach. So that's all from my side, and I wish you, as Delphine before, enjoy and participate, and I hope that it will be beneficial for your work. Thanks a lot. Back to you, Delphine.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for this introduction. Mofle, I guess you are also going to add to Daniel's words. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you go to the slide, please? Actually, I would like to give you a background why this WEFE has been initiated in the Middle East. It's back to 2020. We organized the first time AGUASAN workshop, which is an annual global learning event of a Swiss water and development community organized here in Jordan with focus on water management in time of the climate change, finding actionable solution for a fragile context in the Middle East. And in this webinar, or in this workshop, please go to the other side, the one that's after this one. Four priority areas were identified as needed for the knowledge and for the exchange. Please, the next. So still you need to go to the last one. Yes, exactly, this one. In this workshop, we participants from across the region gathered here, and they identify the priority areas. So they identify 5 priority areas, as you can see. The first one is the water treatment and reuse, wastewater treatment and reuse. The second thing is the water, energy, food ecosystem nexus. The third one, groundwater resource management, and the fourth one, impact of multiple dimension water scarcity and food security, and the last one is smart wash approach for refugees and camps and host community. And then after that, we launched the MENA Sub-RésEAU, and the MENA Sub-RésEAU is a knowledge network and a platform enabling the participant and the actors and the SDC and the SDC partner and different organizations working in the field of the water to exchange knowledge around the water issue. So the network, as I mentioned, launched in 2022. And we decided to take up some of these topics. When I say we established here in the MENA region core team for the MENA Sub-RésEAU. We have representatives from Tunisia, from Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq, and Turkey. And we start the first journey in treated wastewater, decentralized treated wastewater. And now we are actually organizing this webinar to discuss if there's an interest as well to design a new learning journey in the WEFE in the Middle East. Therefore, we will hear today from our colleague from the Blue Peace, Dr. Hakam Al-Alami, and Dr. Toba. They will talk about their experience in WEFE and what is their roadmap to address this WEFE in the Middle East. Please, the second slide. The one in blue. When I talk about the Blue Peace, because I would like just to give you what is the Blue Peace. The Blue Peace is a diplomatic initiative launched in 2011 by Switzerland and by Sweden in that time. And we are now entering the new phase. And then the new phase, actually, as I just mentioned before, the WEFE as a thematic technical area was selected by the Blue Peace community in the region to be the umbrella of the intervention in the future. Under the Blue Peace, we have in this phase two pillars. The first is the policy pillar, hydro diplomacy based on the newly established regional mechanism, and this is chaired by His Royal Highness Prince Hassan bin Talal of Jordan, and we have a representative from across the region in the Middle East, and coordinated by the Inter-Islamic Water Resource Demand Management, which is based here, called Inward Dam. It's hosted for a certain period of time for 3 years. And the second pillar is the capacity development, and it's managed by the Water Diplomacy Center, which is newly established in Jordan under the umbrella of Jordan University of Science and Technology, and its regional hub to build the capacity in water diplomacy. I will not take much time. I would like to give the floor to Delphine to hear from our speaker today, and hopefully this will be very helpful for us in the Middle East and how to shape our WEFE journey in the region to be more actionable or applicable in the region. Over to you.
Thank you, Mafle. So yeah, in order that you as an audience can help us support you a little bit more, before we jump into the speaker's knowledge, we would like to know what is actually your knowledge about WEFE as a concept or even as an approach. So right now you should see a poll popping up on your screen where you just can click once on what would you say, what is your experience. And this will be extremely helpful for us to take an informed decision on how to compose our learning journey. I can see people are being very active. I will give you just a few more seconds. Yeah, give you maybe in total 1 minute, 20 more seconds, and then we will jump right into Dr. Touhba's recorded presentation. Otto, I'm gonna give you the cue for that. Just 1 second. Okay, great, thank you very much. Let's start with Dr. Touhba's presentation.
No sound.
Otto, we cannot hear any sound. Maybe you have to unmute. That could be a reason.
And transboundary waters.
Now, maybe you start again.
The water diplomacy, hydropotics, transboundary. Good morning. My name is Tuğba Evrim. I'm former head of Blue Peace in the Middle East Coordination Office between 2019 and 2022. I'm also Policy Development Coordinator at UNECE Turkish Water Institute. And my background is I'm a hydrogeological engineer, and I have master and PhD degree on water policy and transboundary waters. And in HSUN, I'm deal with the water diplomacy, hydropotics, transboundary waters, and also I and my team following all the recent developments in the world water agenda. And as Mr. Mufleh mentioned in his presentation, there was 5 priority areas identified during the learning journey with AGUASAN 2022. I have a chance to attend this workshop, and I was involved in WEFE Nexus group. I and my friends who are in the group, we focusing on the WEFE Nexus, especially in our region in the Middle East. Please, next slide. And what is WEFE Nexus? In generally, you can meet in the, when you Google it, you can find lots of definition. And I choose that one. The WEFE Nexus approach supports an integrated and coordinated approach across sectors with a view to reconcile conflicted interests, all the while capturing existing opportunities exploring emerging ones. It aims to reduce trade-offs and enhance the efficiency of the entire system through synergies while maintaining the integrity of our ecosystems. As you know, the WEFE Nexus methods highlights the interdependence of water, energy, and food security, as well as the ecosystems, water, soil, and land, and that support that security. The Nexus approach identifies solutions that are mutually beneficial and are founded on an understanding of how water, energy, and agriculture policy interact. Additionally, it offers a clear, transparent framework for choosing suitable trade-offs and synergies that preserve the sustainability and integrity of ecosystem. And in the workshop, our definition was also, you can see from the slide, the water, energy, food ecosystem nexus is an approach that describes and addresses the complex and interrelated nature of global resources systems on which we depend to achieve different social, economic, and environmental goals. And also we are mentioning the sustainability and SDG 6 goals is also very important for the achievement, as you know. And there are some questions about what is IWRM, Integrated Water Resource Management, and what's the difference between WEFE Nexus? They are closely related in many respects. However, IWRM starts with the water resource, whereas Nexus approaches begin by considering all three elements as interrelated systems. Water issue, on the other hand, often function as a catalyst for Nexus approaches. These are the difference between IWRM and WEFE. Next slide, please. And we are focusing on our region. There are, some obstacles. And these are make the situation much more complex when we talk about the WEFE implementation in the region. And the main issue is the limited natural resources. When we talk about the Middle East region, the water resources are limited, especially, the climate is semi-arid and arid area in that region. And climate change impacts. As you know, for 5 years, after 2019 especially, there was a drought period, and it has a great impact on water resources, not only the surface waters, also it has a great impact in groundwaters. So, as you know, the majority of fresh water is used for agriculture in the Middle East. It's nearly more than 70%. And in some countries, the rate is nearly 90%. And this climate change not only has an impact on the water security, also it has an impact on the food security. Water management is another challenge when we talk about the Middle East, because water management is not very well when we compare with the global examples. Water efficiency is another issue. We couldn't save water, especially in agriculture sector. We use traditional methods, and most of the networks needs to be rehabilitated. So from the source to the users, we lost not half of the resources, but most of the resources, and we have to save that water in that limited area. We have, as I said, we have a limited resources. And as I mentioned, agriculture sector. Political instability is another problem. Because of the political instability, we have ability to create institutions which deals with the water issues, but because of the political instability, efficient management of these institutions or management of these institutions is not easy. Lack of comprehensive understandings. Mostly we are focusing on water, energy, and food, but we ignore the reality of environment. And poor coordination among the governmental organizations, institutions, and stakeholders. This is not only the Middle East problem, this is, I think, general problem, because when we come together with the water specialists, water researchers, the poor coordination among the governmental organizations is not very well when we discuss. And short-term plans. It's the main problem about the water management. We need to make long-term plans. Not one of the main priorities is the environment. As I mentioned before, yes, we are focusing on water and energy and food, but there is no awareness about the environmental issue when we use water in the food, agriculture sector or energy sector or other sectors. And lack of awareness, as I mentioned, in that region. Next slide, please. And after our study, we create a vision about the WEFE, capture the interrelationship, synergies, and trade-offs between resources for the WEFE Nexus to ensure a climate-resilient world through more sustainable and integrated solutions. And there are, next slide, please. And we create specific aims that we want to create a program regarding this issue. So we have 4 specific aims. One of them is improving the governance environment to enable to the WEFE Nexus. Under this title, identify gaps on governance. These are laws, policy, regulations, and strategies to understand the current structure. What is the current structure? We have to evaluate the situation, make recommendations based on the analysis of current governance structure, and also policy dialogue is a must. The second one is improving cooperation between sectors through capacity building, knowledge sharing, and communication. And under this title, show ecosystem value by socio-economic valuation of real examples, incorporate this value system into government plans and budget to include in activities for investment in WEFE. And at the meetings about the water issue, when we come together, we discuss generally, yes, water is priority issue. Water means life. And especially in the regions like Middle East, water means everything. But when we try to implement plans and the projects and tangible steps, it's not easy to get in the water sector. First of all, one of the things is awareness. Also, the other thing is investment. And in the implementation process, it's not easy to take steps about this issue. And the third one, attract financial support by showing the socio-economic value of ecosystems. Under this title, show ecosystem value by socio-economic valuation of real examples, incorporate into government place and budget and include in activities for investment in WEFE, attract private financing, for example, green economy can be an attractive one. And fourth one is demonstrate actionable programs with the WEFE Nexus activities. And under this title, research development in technical solutions and innovations, identify projects to provide evidence of WEFE value, develop monitoring indicators for WEFE to, for example, create checklists for solution criteria, track performance, or define success. Now, what are the potential outcomes of the implementation of the idea? Collaboration between different ministries to encourage cross-sectoral projects, thinking that gives priority to the WEFE Nexus rather than individual resources. Specifically, there is a value given to ecosystems in all new projects. Water, energy, and food projects and investment must consider the best way to optimize all 3 resources together and not in isolation, and should include the added value of ecosystems. There is a collaboration between ministries and authorities to optimize the whole WEFE Nexus, and not only their individual responsibilities with policy incentives to make this happen. It's expected that a holistic WEFE Nexus approach will assist in the acceleration of all the SDGs, and in particular, those that support greater welfare, health, and healthy environment. Thank you very much.
Okay, so this was Dr. Tupa's introductory presentation on her experience with the working group of AGUASAN. And now we would like to go over to Dr. Hakam Al-Alami's presentation, providing us a blue piece perspective on the topic.
So good morning, everybody. Do you hear me properly? I will try with the coming 10 minutes to give you an idea about our approach and our new thematic approach to foster cooperation through WEFE Nexus in our Blue Peace in the Middle East initiative, as the WEFE approach has been chosen to be the new narrative for the initiative. May I have the first slide, please? Next slide, please. Thank you. So I will not focus, no, the first one, please. Thank you. I will not focus and speak more about the WEFE Nexus, because we all know the intersection between water, energy, ecosystem, and food. But I'll make use of the time and to talk about the reasons for choosing the WEFE Nexus approach in the member countries in the initiative, as I told you, to be our new narrative, that our new aims and purposes of the initiative will focus on. We are using the WEFE Nexus approach as a tool to address the region's complex and changing challenges and turn them into opportunities for cooperation. And this is a very important aspect. Also, we're using the WEFE Nexus approach to maximize the benefit and to eco-safety for the over-exploitation of groundwater/surface water resources in the area. May I have the next slide, please? The one next to, please, as well. Thank you. Let me start by telling you that the scope of work on the WEFE Nexus approach is still on its early stages. We are still developing ideas and designing our WEFE baseline study. And I would like to thank here in Wardam and the Water Diplomacy Center for kind of supporting us on this topic. We are still in the mapping phase, gathering information and assessing the replicability of pilot projects and the scalability of the WEFE pilot projects to be proposed. And therefore, we have started a working group to brainstorm and design a new narrative for the initiative that is based on WEFE Nexus approach and adding more colors to the initiative to focus more on agriculture, on circular economy, and to get high value, for example, crops for more or less water, focusing on the water use efficiency and adding more elements to our initiative. So may I have the previous slide, please? So as a new program, we have also focused on preparing the new generation to become a kind of ambassadors to the initiative, especially women and a young generation. And the most important thing that we are using the WEFE Nexus approach to have a more resilient ecosystem in the Middle East that pours into security of all its forms, food security, energy security, water security, and above all, human security, that would cause stability and hinder or reduce migration. May I have the slide after it, please? No, the one after it. Thank you. So therefore, we have decided to have a baseline study. May I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So, Water Diplomacy Center and INWARDM have jointly conducted a WEFE baseline study after we, as managing committee group, have joined and discussed and brainstormed the most important outline of the baseline study. The scope of the study is definitely the member countries, which are 6 countries in the Middle East. And the study should entail and will start by a revision of a natural policies and legal frameworks of each country individually, and then kind of correlating the common aspects and the common ground between the national policies and the legal framework for each country. So we have a national assessment of the socio-economic situation and kind of a study or an exploration for the status quo of the water and natural resources condition of each country. And then after that, we would be able to assess the WEFE situation by mapping it and kind of projecting it on the ground, and to explore the strength and the weakness parts in the WEFE Nexus approach in the study countries. So after doing that, the baseline study will focus and deliver some recommendations that revolve around capacity building on a national and on a regional level, and it would also provide proposals for different scale WEFE projects in one or more of the study countries. And the pilot, again, we are looking at the scalability, the sustainability, and the replicability of the pilot projects. How is it going to be designed? By actually visiting the strength and the weakness points of each country based on the socioeconomic input that we would be having to as a result of the analysis of the study. And all of this is done in order to pour into the ability of trust building and confidence building between the countries in kind of promoting such pilot projects to enhance and foster cooperation. The deliverables of the study are mainly a very detailed timeline for a research plan. And we have also we are aiming at a regional hub, a regional WEFE hub, and of course a pilot study, as I said. And this regional hub is usually based, or it is going to be a dynamic platform for the aggregation and the dissemination of WEFE data. This is a first, let's say, task of the regional hub, which will be also supported by the WDC and INWARDM jointly. The second task of it is going to be the data update and verification of the relation between the different sectors in the WEFE nexus. As we know, in the same country, we have different sets of information that need to be verified, that need to be updated, and then we're aiming at a bigger image of incorporating and kind of coordinating those information together. In my last 1 minute, I would like to mention that we're also focusing on the WEFE journalism platform, And finally, in a couple of days, we're going to lead as managing committee a study tour to Portugal and Spain to visit WEFE projects and to see whether we can benefit out of this experience and transfer the knowledge and the know-how to our region in a way or in a manner that can support our sustainable resources management and safely tackle our ecology elements. And thank you so much.
Presentation ending with this very elegant group picture, blue piece. Thank you very much, Dr. Hakam Al-Alami.
My pleasure.
This is the cue for Mrs. Lucia de Strasser from UNECE. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Delphine. Can you hear me? Yes. So good morning, everyone, and good morning to all the friends and colleagues I see among the attendees to this workshop. My name is Lucia. I work at the Secretariat of the Water Convention, which is at the UNECE, which is the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. I am personally overseeing the activities on water, food, energy, ecosystem nexus. Next, please. I would like to start with a story, and the story is the story of two countries, one upstream and one downstream. They share a river. Upstream, there is an issue of energy poverty, where people do not have access to affordable alternatives to wood fuel, and therefore they use wood from the forest. There is a problem of forest degradation. Downstream, this means that there is an increase of flash floods or an increased exposure to flash floods, which means that farmers downstream may lose their fertile soil, and they experience a damage in economic terms. It also means that the downstream dam, which is supposed to supply water and energy to the downstream country, has a lot of sediments, and this is a problem that needs to be managed. So all of this is a storyline that looks very theoretical, but is actually the outcome of dialogue that was facilitated by the Water Convention and partners in Georgia and Azerbaijan back in 2013. This was the first so-called Nexus assessment carried out under the Water Convention, which I will say a few words about in the coming slides. Now, of course, this dialogue involved stakeholders and representatives of authorities from the different sectors and from the two different countries. And as a jointly developed policy recommendation among different recommendations, there was the facilitation of access to alternatives to wood fuel, of course, because of this. What is interesting is that when we got back to the participants to this process years later, they informed us that in Georgia, so upstream, there was an active policy to connect these municipalities to the gas grid. And what is possibly even more interesting is that this necessarily comes as a result of international cooperation, because Georgia doesn't have natural gas, and it comes as a trade agreement with Azerbaijan, which is a downstream country. Now, if we go back to this dialogue that we had several years ago, we can see that there are benefits from these policy actions that go well beyond the affordability of fuel and the, for example, reduced indoor air pollution. And they include reduced erosion, benefits to the hydrological regime, benefits to the ecosystem, reduced impact of flash floods, and benefits for farmers and higher manageability of the dam. Now, quantifying these benefits is really not easy, and this is one important point that I want to make in this presentation. Next slide, please. Step back, what is the Water Convention? It's a legal framework, it's a UN convention. It's also an intergovernmental platform, and as such is the place within the UN system to discuss transboundary water cooperation and everything that evolves around this topic. As a platform is open to parties and non-parties to the convention. This means that is also a place for really sharing experience and knowledge among the countries around the world and river basins that are shared around the world. Next, please. So the Water Convention has a broad program of work and of course, number one, promoting awareness and accession to the convention around the world. Important point, we recently had the first party from the region, which is Iraq, joined the convention this year, but also it has a lot of activities that are more technical, let's say, and one of them is this Nexus, or the promotion of an integrated approach to water management. Next, please. Amongst the various activities that are done on the Nexus, there are the so-called assessments, and the example I made before comes from one of them. Of course, in order to carry out these assessments, we had to start from something, and this something was the development of a methodology to carry out such an assessment in a more or less consistent manner in basins that are very different for the context, and that can also experience very different issues. If you're interested, the methodology is online and it explains in detail all of the steps, making examples from our experience so far. The heart of the methodology is what you see here. There is an analytical process carried out by a team of experts. And when I say expert, I mean experts in energy systems, water management, agriculture, and farming. It's very difficult to be an expert in all of this at the same time, but if you have a solid team of experts in the different fields, you have you're in good hands. And then on the other hand, of course, you have the stakeholders and the authorities that really drive the process. And the heart of this process is workshops where people meet from the different sectors with the analyst, and they design the process together, and they go about the joint identification of issues, quantification wherever possible, or qualitative identification of issues and possible solutions. Next slide, please. So this is, as a water convention, we worked in these basins that you see in this map, but I would like to also point out that very similar approaches, more or less linked to our work, were done also in other places, also by partners such as the GIZ in the Niger Basin, or in Central Asia in other basins, and in Latin America, in many other. So there is quite a lot of experience at the level of river basin. I will spend a few words on the basin that is located in the MENA region, because I hope it will give good insights to you. Next slide, please. So the Northwestern Sahara Aquifer System is shared by Algeria, Libya, and Tunisia. This is a Nexus assessment that we carried out in cooperation with Global Water Partnership Mediterranean and with the Observatory of Sahara and Sahel. In 2016-17, the main challenges experienced in this basin or this aquifer system are very similar in many groundwater bodies in the region and in the world. And they are increased demand for water, especially from agriculture, increased withdrawals, so a lot of energy used for pumping, the impact of climate change on society horizontally, and on farming, which has an impact on this demand. Insufficient infrastructure in many areas, or as was pointed out before, maybe inefficient infrastructure, and low value of water. This is related very much to the value that people and users attach to water, which is deeply related to the capacity of policymakers to take concrete actions to maybe reduce the use of water with some sort of incentive. What did we do there? There was an integrated modeling exercise, water, food, energy, basically. And this modeling exercise supported a cross-sectoral dialogue that then helped the participants to this process, which were, of course, from the different countries and from the different sectors, to prioritize together the problems and to come up with what we called a package of solutions to be implemented across the different sectors. Next, please. So this is very technical, but just to explain that this is a system because it's 2 layers basically of deep water, and one is very, very deep. The other one is a little less deep and is connected to the most to another body of water that is really close to the surface, and it's the one that is the most polluted and the most used for agriculture. So it's a complex system. For anybody who's working in groundwater knows it's complex to study, and it's complex to manage. And as you can see from the statistics, it's very important for all the 3 countries. Next, please. So the model that was developed was aimed to support policy makers in taking decisions. So to give some sort of insights that could support decisions in agriculture, water management, and energy. And one important feature of the model that was developed is that is open source. So trying to really give an opportunity to the participants to this work to then carry it on further and keep on using the model that was developed. And also it was GIS based to give as much detail as possible. Next, please. What did we want to answer? Basically, from an obvious question, what is the total irrigated area in the region? It's not necessarily known. What is the water demand for irrigation? What is an estimate? These basic questions are supposed to answer more policy relevant questions, such as what would be the impact of improving irrigation systems? If desalination is needed, how much energy would be required? And for example, from an energy planning point of view, what would it take to make renewables, large scale investments in renewables, really competitive with the most common way of providing energy for agriculture right now, which is diesel pumps? Next, please. So some selected results, I'll go very fast. I hope it's clear, but I also give you the reference to the study. There was an estimate of the impact of improving irrigation, which was incredible. Almost 50% could be saved. A big volume of water. But the question is, what does water efficiency mean? Does it mean that we will reduce water consumption, that we will conserve more water? Not necessarily. So the model, of course, doesn't say what you have to do, but it only says what it only describes different scenarios. And at the end is policy decisions. Next, please. Another insight on energy demand. What we looked at was what would it take in terms of energy consumption to reach level of salinity, because there is a high salinity in the top layers of this aquifer. So what would it take to desalinate this water? And of course, it depends what type of salinity you want to reach at the end of the process. So then you can flip the question and ask yourself, can we reduce the the end goal of the level of salinity that we want? Can we use in agriculture a high salinity water, for example? This would reduce the cost of energy. Next, please. And then, as I said, we were comparing different types of energy sources, and basically, we looked at PV because it's the most, I mean, solar is widely available and is also cheapest among the renewable energy resources available. And there was a comparison with diesel generators, and the comparison was done on the capital cost of technology. So varying that, which means making the technology more available in the internal markets of these countries, and varying the fuel cost, the fossil fuel cost, which would make more or less cheap to use diesel generators. Next, please. Basically, without going into the details, the main message was that reducing the cost of technology would be a more effective measure than increasing the cost of fossil fuels, which means reducing the subsidies to fossil fuels. And this is one insight from the model, basically. Next, please. Now, much beyond this model, which was aimed at quantifying like some questions, the process came, the main output was this package of solutions, which had, as I was saying before, were jointly developed by the participants, and that are, basically the different responsibilities of the different sectors at the level of governance and cooperation, at the level of policy instruments, at the level of infrastructure, what they are supposed to do to improve the situation in the basin. Can you please click, Otto? Yes. So what is important is that these solutions are connected. So there are synergies between these solutions. And this means that even though you would say, okay, develop a sustainable program for diversified renewable energy is a problem of the energy sector, they need to do this in tandem with the water sector for reasons that some of them were explained before. Next, please. So I will not go into each action, but each solution has a set of actions inside. And as you can see, we try to break down as much as possible what each sector is supposed to be doing under the lead of, for every solution, a different sector. So in this case, upscaling non-conventional water resources, of course, there needs to be a strategy. The strategy needs to come from water and agriculture, but then you would also need to have strong promotion of solar energy from the energy sector, for example, to allow this to happen with renewable energy, and so on and so forth. Next, please. This is the other the other solution, and it mirrors what I just said. I mean, under the lead of energy, you still need environment, you still need water actions, and these are concrete policy actions. Next, please. So I think it's the last slide, or second to last. We have some experience from the MENA region that we have collected with this publication that is called Solutions and Investments in the Water, Food, Energy Ecosystems Nexus, that was published in 2021. From Jordan, an example of a public-private partnership for wastewater treatment, and also regional opportunities identified at the transboundary level between Jordan, Israel, and Palestine. These comes together with many other examples from many different areas of the world in this publication, if you're interested. Also together with the experience in the aquifer, of course. And then recently, at the last meeting of the Nexus Task Force, by the way, there is a task force for knowledge sharing specifically on WEFE Nexus under the Water Convention. There was a very interesting presentation from Jordan highlighting the opportunities for Nexus solutions through regional cooperation, bilateral agreements, and infrastructure. And it was also presenting a Nexus assessment at country level that was using a model that was very similar to the one done in the SAS. Next, please. So as a conclusion, transboundary cooperation is, from the study that we made, is the top enabling factor for the implementation of Nexus solution in shared basins. Of course, this sounds like obvious, but it also means that where there is no active transboundary cooperation, it's very hard to make these solutions happen. Now, a Nexus approach can be, it doesn't necessarily is, but can be key to do a number of things. And one of them is sustainable renewable energy planning, for example. And I highlight these and climate change adaptation and mitigation because they're those that not necessarily fall into the water domain, but they must be priority for us as well. Nexus solutions are not necessarily called Nexus, so we need to look for them, to learn from them. And then finally, to implement and upscale Nexus solutions, because they can be also at a very small scale, and then they need to be upscaled to make a difference. We need basin level action plans. If we're talking about basins, we need coordinated strategies, and we need coordinated investment plans. So regional organization and IFIs have really a key role to play in this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucia, for this extremely thorough presentation and also the valuable sources you provide at the end. That is all very valuable. Thank you so much. So I'm gonna give a breather to the speakers, and this is now the opportunity for our attendees to ask your questions. You can either write them into the Q&A window, or in case you cannot write it into the Q&A, you can raise your hand. I can already see there are two questions. One is by Rebecca Sands. She asks, to what extent are you addressing the governance challenges of the WEFE project in the program? And have you seen any of these challenges in practice? Poor transparency, etc. So I believe this is addressed to the UNECE program, if I understand. And the second one is, I'm just going to read it out because I couldn't read it even before. Congratulations on the important and most promising work on the WEFE Nexus. You must be already pursuing this, but in the context of collaboration and complementarity, it is important to consult and refer to what is already going in the region on the issue. For example, there is ongoing work under the political framework of the Union for the Mediterranean with dedicated work on the WEFE Nexus involving formally the countries through the ministries in charge of water and the ministries of foreign affairs. So I think let's go for the first one, and the second one could actually also be interesting for Dr. Hakam. Yes, I give you the floor to react.
So I start, right?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So I'm okay. In the UNECE work, in the Water Convention work, governance was of course a very important part of the story, a very important part of the analysis as well. So in the methodology document, you see that actually the job of the analysts is to study the resources and the interlinkages among resources, and then the governance context, which is institutions, policy, and regulations. So yes, I would say to a big extent we addressed governance challenges, and I think at the end of the day they're the most important. But of course, having a sense of resources flows is an important. It's important to inform governance and to make a better governance. And yeah, poor transparency. It's a big one in many cases.
Thank you. And even if I'm not sure to whom this question is addressed, maybe Dr. Hakam. Yes, can you talk about how the different stakeholders are already involved, such as the Union for the Mediterranean political framework?
Thank you so much for the question and for the information of the involvement of so many NGOs, of many institutions, of so many also governmental governing institutions and relevant ministries and authorities. Actually, that's why when I said that the first stage of our recommended or proposed baseline study would start with the revision of the national policies and legal framework for each country. And then we will also map and evaluate all the WEFE, let's say, regional attempts to kind of find the right WEFE Nexus approach that suits the region, and building on whatever effort the region has done. We do not want to reinvent the wheel. It is always better to work on what is already established, kind of incorporated, molded, tailor-make it to a better kind of tool to be adopted instead of reinventing the wheels. Of course, we will revise all the WEFE efforts that have been regionally and nationally accomplished, and we will build on them. And thank you again for this question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hakam. There is another question this is Dimka Stanchev from SDC. Question to Lucia. Can you tell us about the progress achieved since WEFE study in 2017? And what are the foreseen studies in the UNECE pipeline?
Sorry, I don't see the question. I see a question on indicators, but I don't see.
Okay, so this one is because it's in the chat and not
okay.
in the... Yeah.
Okay, sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, of course. It's can you tell us about the progress achieved since the WEFE study in 2017? And if there are other studies foreseen in the pipeline of UNECE?
Okay,
it's
so
questions.
Okay, so when I said 2017, I think I was referring to the study in the Northwestern Sahara Aquifer system. Our work on the Nexus started before, in I think 2012. Well, the recognition of these issues was even before that. It was, I think, a decision of the meeting of the parties, I think in 2008 even, to work on Nexus. So the achievements under the Water Convention overall are many, and there are 7 basin assessments, 1 aquifer, which is the one that I have presented, and then global workshops, specific publications dedicated to different teams, and renewable energy is a big one, because that was also a collaboration within UNECE with energy colleagues. And then in the aquifer per se, there was this assessment, and there is some discussion ongoing with the countries to see what the follow-up would be, but there was no follow-up project, at least from our side. So I don't know if the question was referring to the aquifer or the UNECE work overall. However, I'm also aware that there are many other studies ongoing or starting on the Nexus in the aquifer, and there it's really important was what was just said, that we don't reinvent the wheel, that we make an effort to hunt on Google and in our networks what has been done already and what we can use, such as this work, this model, for example. I don't know if I answered the question.
Thank you. I think you did, because indeed I believe that she meant about the study specifically.
Okay.
I can read. Yes, the question was referring to the NWSAS aquifer. How was the study used by the countries? Okay, this is again a bit of another.
Well, it was used. We didn't have the chance like we did in for the Al-Azani case, which I presented first, to go back and answer this specific question yet. So hopefully it was used a lot, but we don't know. We don't have a clear understanding of that. But at least at the end of that work, there was a sort of a plan to use these package of solutions to, for example, make proposals for climate adaptation strategies in the basin, proposal for transformation of agriculture in the basin. So to use these as let's say a proposal for future activities in the basin or also in parts of the basin, because at the end it's true for the whole basin, but it's true also for parts of it.
Thank you. There is another question coming in. Maybe Dr. Hakam can also talk about this regarding Blue Peace. When addressing the nexus, do you have specific indicators that can be used to evaluate progress in the WEFE applications? We heard from Lucia before that it's not easy to quantify, but maybe with Blue Peace you have another approach.
Well, actually, as Lucia said, that is very true, but we all need benchmarks to start, and also to kind of goals to measure. So we have set a lot of parameters that are socioeconomic based, environmental based, demand driven based, and of course climate change based, by kind of measuring the status quo, and what is this nexus approach will be having kind of a boost or an effect after applying this program. So we will have an estimate by mapping and evaluating the status quo and what are the goals that we are aiming at, and definitely a comparison has to be done by the end of the baseline study.
And is this, I have just a follow-up question to that. Is that quantitative or a qualitative kind of mapping?
We'll try to have them both. If we had the right set of information and the data, definitely we'll go to the quantitative more than the qualitative. But as I said, it depends on the amount of data, and we need to have a uniform data or kind of a compatible data format in each country, so we would be able to do this.
Can I add something on this,
Of course.
Delphine? Just to maybe clarify what I said before. I mean, it is very difficult to quantify some interlinkages, and I mean especially those that relate to the ecosystems, because there is like part of that science doesn't exist. We are not even sure if we will ever get to indicators that are meaningful, because an indicator needs to be meaningful. If it complicates our lives more than it facilitates our lives, then it's not a useful one. And just in our experience, we tried to be as quantitative and as indicator based as possible, and this for the simple reason that I mean, for two reasons. One is that what you can quantify is much more visual, much more understandable also for those receiving the results of the study, but also where there was this ambition to be able to compare, to make comparisons. But I think my take is that indicators do not necessarily need to be quantitative where they cannot be quantitative, and it's very important, more than
I lost you, Lucia. I don't know how it is for the others. Yeah.
We too.
indicators.
Yeah. Now you're back. Lucia, we just
Sorry.
your last sentence. No worries at all.
So more important that we use the same indicators. That in the community of people working on this WEFE Nexus, that we sort of develop these indicators together, because it's a very difficult challenge.
Absolutely, that was an important last sentence. Okay, I will check if we have more questions. Yes. When, yeah, no, this is already another one. Okay. WEFE approach will remain a theoretical concept unless we clearly identify the shared benefits among users. This is to be done case by case. What do you think? Maybe Dr. Hakam. If you want to read it again, it is in the Q&A as a response to Mr. Shaheen's question.
Can you please repeat
Yes, of course.
it, because I cannot see the question.
So the person who wrote the question says the approach might remain theoretical, the WEFE as a concept, unless we clearly identify the shared benefits among the users. And he asks whether this benefits and the identification, should this be done case by case, or is there a pattern that could be used?
Yes, thank you. When it comes to shared benefits, sometimes the shared benefit can be within the same country. For example, the upstream, downstream relationships, or on a regional scale where, for example, the same geographic and environmental condition prevail. So the shared benefit thing has to be mutual. There must be a mutual benefit that would be so tempting to countries in order to foster cooperation. So that's why when we're thinking of pilot projects or even mega project or small scale projects, centralized solutions or decentralized solutions, the shared benefit issue has to be the most important convincing factor for cooperation. It has to be studied perfectly so that every country would have a win-win situation, though I always believe a win-win situation is very difficult to get, but let's say most win situation between the countries. Other than this, there will be no fostering for cooperation. So shared benefit can again be nationally applied or regionally applied or mutually applied as a bilateral, for example, cooperation between countries along certain aspect of the WEFE Nexus approach.
Yeah, indeed, win-win situations, as you said, not always easy to achieve. There is another question asking, did you consider climate change and future development, agricultural and industrial projects in your analysis of Algerian, Tunisian, Libyan aquifer systems? So, Lucia, I guess this is for you. The consideration of this triple intersection, climate change, future agriculture, and future industry projects.
So future developments of agriculture was the main, let's say,
element.
The main element that was studied, because really, I mean, climate change impact would have needed a bit of a different set of data and type of analysis. And as I said, also, I mean, groundwater experts in the audience maybe can also add to this if I'm not very precise, because it's not specifically my field, but the impact of climate change on groundwater is very difficult to model. But not only because of that, but because our model was really a socioeconomic based model that looked at agriculture, that was the main sector of activity of the people living in the basin. We looked, for example, at making irrigation more efficient, but also shifting crops from one to another. What would be the impact, and for industrial, and also the impact in terms of water quality needs, as I was saying before, because there is this problem of salinity. And then when it comes to industrial projects, I would say yes, because we looked at energy development, energy grid development, and there was also quite a lot of information on national grids versus mini grids versus standalone systems. So those projects were electricity power projects.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. We have another very interesting question, maybe regarding the blue piece also. Do you think that municipalities and local authorities can play a significant role in WEFE? So even if most spotlight is on transboundary, transnational water diplomacy, if local authorities have a significant role, what could this role be? This is the question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Walid, for the very precise and excellent questions that you always throw. As I said, it is so important that we start from a national basis to a regional basis, and we cannot talk regionally without getting involved such municipalities and local authorities, relevant ministries, because we all need to have a kind of a base to be built on. And if you don't serve your purpose nationally, you cannot project it into a regional scale. So I would always appreciate every national intervention, especially in providing the data that we need, because what the input into your kind of model or into your aspect or your goal, the input data is too important to have a more realistic output data to be transferred on a regional effect. For definitely every authorization, and even the private sector could play a role, and that's why we're even focusing on the new generation, because our message is not, for example, only valid for the coming 5 years. The goals and the achievement that we are aiming at should go on for generations and generations. So definitely yes.
Thank you, Dr. Hakam. So we are coming to an end of the Q&A session. Thank you for all the questions that were addressed. Now, a small additional effort required from the dear audience. We will launch just another poll right now with 2 questions, I believe, for our learning journey again. The first is whether this webinar was even useful for you. As I could see in the previous poll, many are quite experienced already in the topic. And a second question is, would you be interested in following a learning journey? And if yes, for how much time would you want to invest for it? So you have again a minute to fill this in. This will again be very helpful. In case you have to scroll down to see all the questions. And I can see people already participating. There is no one who does not want to join a learning journey. That's very pleasant to see. And also time commitment seems to be quite good. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds, such that everybody who is here can still respond. Yeah, I can see not much moving anymore, so I think we can complete this. You can see some found it a little bit useful, the webinar, some found it very useful, and nice to see that so many people would like to join the learning journey. Also investing a couple of days per month. Very nice. So with this impression, I would like to give the floor to Mafle Alalawin again to give his closing remarks. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank the speaker and for the really interactive webinar and the question and the answer. And I think the main purpose of this webinar is to share the roadmap that we have in the Middle East and how we are going to address the WEFE in the Blue Bees and to exchange with you. And I think this is a great opportunity as well to learn from this interaction. And it seems as well there's an interest to launch a WEFE learning journey from all the participants, which is a good sign. And we will study this internally and come with a solid and concrete proposal in how we are going to have constructive and useful journey. The second thing, which is very important, and I think you all agree on it, it is that there is a need to demonstrate the WEFE thinking approach, and I would like to call it thinking approach rather than a pilot project. And we don't want to limit this in an infrastructure project. It's more about how the sector can think together, cross-sector, or have coordination among themselves. And this has to be based in shared benefits approach to change the narrative, because I agree with the point that the shared benefits approach is very important and to show all they will be benefiting from this, otherwise there will be no sustainability. In addition, I think there's a need as well to value the socio-economic benefits as well and the ecosystem, and this is very important for the sustainability and the local, specifically the local community, to or to feel the benefit of this WEFE Nexus when it comes to the implementation. And the last point, the objective is this WEFE Nexus approach is to build synergy and to reduce a trade-off between this traditionally, let's say, planning approach. And now it can be from this webinar, what I can grab from this webinar, it can be implemented at different level, local level, even subnational level, national level, and the transboundary level, where it's seen like a tool that can bring the different actors toward discussion, a sustainable discussion, and to help as well in a trust building, negotiation between the different sector organization and between the countries themselves, Riberian's country. And I think this is very important, how we can work across those levels in order to have real WEFE thinking. And the last, but just this the last point, sorry, is it's very important tools as well to change the conventional or the traditional negotiation approach among the Riberian or between the Riberian's country, which is the focus in this volumetric or the cubic meter negotiation approach, toward more shared benefits approach, dialogue, because it addresses different elements, ecosystem, socioeconomic, land conservation, or it's mentioned even the water conservation, the food, and the energy. So I will end up here and give the floor to my colleague, Dr. Daniel, to provide his inputs for the closing. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mafle, and thanks to all for having participated, as was said before. I can skip my pitch for joining the learning journey, so that's great. I will then use the time to quickly try to connect a few dots and shed light on a few aspects that were touched upon during this webinar. I'll go in sequence, starting with Dr. Tugba. One element I recall is she spoke about water scarcity. Of course, we all do in such contexts, like in the Middle East, North African region, and in others as well. But I just wanted to flag that if we go for a WEFE approach, a Nexus understanding, we'll have to move beyond water efficiency. And this has sometimes a technical connotation, but we need to go also towards a better understanding of what could or should be water effectiveness. And that's what we're trying at the water section of SDC's headquarters as well. It's simply the question, is it, and to make it very easy, is it good to grow cotton in Central Asia when you have a shortage of water? Do you need to really have rice as a crop in semi-arid regions, etc.? So that is an aspect that I recall from Dr. Tugba's presentation. Then there was several times stressed the need for added value, co-benefits of the WEFE approach. And this needs to involve all the themes and needs to be understandable and tangible. And here I think it's also interesting to distinguish between the value and the price for resources or for goods or for services. And I think often there's a strong focus on the price element and on the benefit as an economic benefit, but there are other elements that need to be taken into consideration if we want to value water and other resources, not only from a price perspective. Then I go to Dr. Hakan. You stressed the socioeconomic study, situational study that is going to be done or has been launched already by the Blue Peace Middle East. You mentioned the WEFE baseline study. For me, what's really also interesting from there to extract, and that was also mentioned by other speakers, by Lucia as well, this necessity to understand the socioeconomic fabric, but there's also the political element. And here I'll do an advertising now. We've been doing a political economy analysis, a so-called PEA in Central Asia last year, and we're preparing for a next webinar on that topic. PEA, political economy analysis in the water sector. So for those of you who are interested, you'll get the information. It will be happening in a few weeks. And I think it is nicely complementing. It is actually an integral part, like a basement for the WEFE approach. Then moving to Lucia, you really nicely stressed the importance of the process with all concerned stakeholders, and the difficulty to quantify the benefits is another dot that connects to the value and price issue before. So this importance leads to having mindsets that allow us and also tools and processes that allow us to have multi-level, multi-stakeholder, but also multi-shareholder processes, as this is not the same. If you're a stakeholder in the region, you may have shareholders outside of the region that have an impact and have interests. So all this is a complex machine that we need to understand in order to be more relevant and more to the point, and also more tangible, as was requested before. Now, I said in the beginning, first now it was about why WEFE and what WEFE, or what is WEFE. I think this has been nicely explained and shown by the speakers and the panelists. Now it's about how do we do that? And I think here we need to understand that integrated water resource management or integrated natural resource management is not exactly the WEFE, because with WEFE we put maybe sustainable development at the center, and we have then around water, energy, disaster risk reduction, food systems, ecosystems, etc., this cluster green approach, which then allows us not to put our sector into the center, but the sustainable development, and then to see how all this interacts, interferes, interdependencies, etc. So with this, I thank again everyone, and I would say that this task force of UNECE on Wi-Fi is another opportunity, hopefully, to collaborate during the learning journey, and I look forward to have lots of you participating, sometimes more actively, sometimes less, but let us be together on that journey towards a more effective development cooperation through the WEFE Nexus approach. Thanks a lot, and back to you, Delphine.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for your closing remarks. So yes, this is it for today, for this webinar. Thank you very much for your attendance, dear audience. Thank you, of course, very much to our speakers and all participants to be there today. And exactly, this session has been recorded, and make sure you join the réseau such that you can actually access this recording. You will get the news on the réseau thread on the news page. So Rebecca for this has shared the link, which is in the chat. Join the réseau network here via the groups. That's it from my side. Yes, thank you very much for participating. I wish you a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you to all. Bye-bye.
Thank you to all of you. Bye-bye.